What's up, gamers? And today we're going to be talking about Mr. Sunday versus Miss Fugue, or Master Fugue, Ting Yun, however you want to say it, guys. So today we're going to be facing off a head-to-head battle, even if you will, a PvP battle between these two characters to see what character you should be pulling for your account. Let's go ahead and get a baseline of the general use case scenarios, right? For Sunday, we're talking he can be used in hyper carry teams. Doesn't work too well in dual DPS teams. We'll talk about more teams he doesn't work on in a second here. Another big thing he works on, summonable teams you can summon with, right? So he's going to work in these are the main two teams he can work in, right? Very hyper carry teams and very summon based teams as well, where he's better in this team, obviously. Let's go ahead and move over to Miss Fugue here, right? She is going to be working in, oh my god, break teams, right? So break teams, and I also think that she's going to be working in teams that need debuffs as well. So debuff oriented teams, I think she'll be shining in those types of teams too. So if we're talking about overall general use, I do think that hyper carry is better than working in these two niches, right? Because I do think the hyper carry, if you were to call it a niche, is a lot bigger, right? Because we're talking, this works in any scenario where you have one DPS that does all your damage, right? Whereas break, I mean, break works with break characters, right? So you really need break characters. I mean, I guess you could say that this DPS thing really needs help with, I guess you could say, crit-based characters, right? Or where I guess you could say, like, this is, like, very crit-oriented, and this is more break-oriented, right? I mean, if we take a look here, just like the Pride Win tier list, for example, just to kind of look at kind of, like, the DPS we have in the game right now, who fits into that niche, right? I think you could technically fit Fei Zhao in that niche because she is a crit-based DPS. Obviously, Firefly does not fit in that niche because she's not a crit-based DPS. Where I think you really start to see Sunday shine is because I think Sunday can shine for Acheron. I think Sunday can shine for Dr. Ratio. I think he can shine for Yun Li. I think he can work for Topaz Noombi. I think he can work for Mose, March 7th. Clara Don Hung. I think he can work with most of these characters here, where I think the real problem with where Fugue shines at is in the characters she can be used with, right? Because, like I mentioned, all these characters that he can be used with, I'm not saying at max effectiveness because they don't have summons, right? But that's where he can be used with some type of effectiveness that still really benefits that team. But where Fugue comes in at is teams like break teams. So you're gonna see her being used on teams with Firefly, with Boot Hill, with Rappa, obviously, with Acheron. Really outside of that, you're not really focusing on a break team here, no break team here, no break team here. Acheron because of debuff meta and stuff like that, obviously, and then Himeko. Outside of that, though, there's not really much it worked with, right? I mean, I guess you could put him on this team as well and run like her on like a break-s team with these characters right here, because she does offer maybe like defense down, right? So overall, I think that overall general use case scenarios, he has more generalized use case scenarios, right? But this does kind of stun lock you out of future dual DPS teams, and this is a big detractor I talked about in my previous video. Like, you're not going to be running him on dual DPS teams for the most part, just because he is so solo focused on like giving buffs to one particular ally and like max stacking one ally altogether, because I mean, everything goes, like, you have to put everything on that one ally, right? His ultimate affects one ally, gives you crit rate, crit damage to him, and makes him be fitted, so you're refunding skill points back. So it really incentivizes you to be buffing that one ally. So dual DPS teams kind of had the equation for him, but I feel like more dual DPS teams are on the table for someone like Miss Fugue here, but I do think they have to be in that break category for you to really take use of it, considering she does have a super break in her kit. With her having super break in her kit, you obviously want a little more break oriented characters. Like, I think a great scenario you could put her in is a scenario with like a Himeko and then also Rappa as well, right? So I think she could work there. I do think that Sunday is better in terms of general use than what Fugue is, because like I said, she's kind of stun locked to these two teams right here. And sure, maybe these teams will grow, right? Like, maybe we'll see growth from the debuff team, maybe we'll see growth from the break team later on down the line, but as of right now, we haven't seen much growth with it. All we still have for this debuff-oriented team is literally Acheron, which she works well with right now. And then for break, we obviously have a lot of breaks. So if you're really focusing on getting break characters, you have a lot of break characters on your account right now, and you're struggling to run two different teams, or you can't run two different teams, I think that she could be the obvious option for you. Now, they're kind of two sides of a coin, right? So it depends on how your account looks and how your account is built up. If you have a lot of hyper carry DPS, she's the option. If you don't have a lot of hyper carry DPS and you have like debuff break teams, she would be the option for you there. Now what I want to get into, guys, is how strong is each one of these characters in their own perspective niche. So that being like the hyper carry niche here, and then also the break slash debuff meta over here, right? Highlighted in this blue color here is going to be everyone that's like really good for Fugue, and then highlighted in yellow here is what's going to be usable and pretty decent for Fugue, right? I think overall this is what we're going to see, right? I mean, there's a lot more characters that are much more useful for Sunday. And also the big thing with Sunday as well is he is like combining these three characters together to kind of make a like god unit, right? So we're making like a kind of god tier unit here, I guess you could say, right? So let's make the Jin Yuan mains happy. We know what they're posting already. But yes, I think this kind of makes him more of like a god tier unit versus someone like a Fugue, which I think falters a little bit, right? Like, I guess she does like all these things, right? But Sunday does this character's thing and this character's thing to like the utmost like broken ass shit. With a little bit of like SP efficiency, right? Whereas Fugue does this, she does some of this, she does some super break here, really good super break, and she does some debuffs, right? Like, I feel like she has a lesser two things on these nodes here, and this is a really good super break S character with adding a new mechanic into the game. It's kind of like okay in a sense. So I mean, at the end of the day, like what you get from both of the characters here, like the hyper carry niche here is like super big for him, whereas the break meta is not as big for her right now, right? But I do think in terms of like how strong each of these characters are going to be within their own niches, I think they're pretty even. Like, I don't think that's cope to say that they're pretty even. Like, she's offering a new mechanic into the game with the extra extra break mechanic into the game, adding super break, adding defense down on enemies. Like, she does a lot for that, like, own niche, that own meta of things over here. They do their own respective niche really, really well. I feel like Sunday's a little bit better, but I wouldn't say he's, like, a tier above what Fugue does for the break niche, right? If we're talking about overall usability, I think he wins there, but if we're talking about what they do for their own perspective niches, I feel like they're very, very similar. So that kind of leads me to our last point now, which is future-proof ability, guys. I want characters that are going to be building for the future, right? So future-proofing is like a really big thing for me, right? And I think that should be the thing for most free-to-play players coming to the game as well. I just spelt that all fucked up. It doesn't matter. I think that's a really big thing for players coming to the game, right? And I feel like overall future-proof ability has pros and cons for both. I think the overall future-proof ability for him is more in a way. And the reason I feel like that is because he does have like such a generalized base of where he can start off from. And the reason I feel like that is because his niche he fits in, which is the hyper carry or summon niche, is a much bigger base than the break niche and debuff niche we have in the game right now. That could change. Not saying that it can't, but this also needs to take into account what we're getting to the future. So what does he get in the future? The summon meta, the remembrance path, right? The remembrance path. I mean, like, he's doing these two big things right here, which are new paths coming to the game, which I think is going to make him a lot more future-proof, right? Because he's going to be playing into that niche, he's going to be playing into that meta really, really nicely for the future to come. Like, this is already like a guaranteed thing we're getting. We know what he does. We know what these other characters might do based off of what we've seen. So with that being said, I think that we have a guaranteed path for him in the future, that he is going to work in the future with future characters coming out in 3.0. Fugue, on the other hand, while we already have the break meta out into the game, we've had it out in the game for a while, I feel like how I see the break meta going, guys, is something like this. Let me put a chart up for you guys. This is how the break meta is going to go right here, right? So it's going to go from where it's at right now, probably down, because we're probably not going to get a release character, and then it'll probably go back up, right? That's how I see it going. Whereas I feel like with him, what his chart would look like, if I were to say, is it's probably going to go like this. Release, really good, and then start slowly declining after that, right? So I feel like she's going to get a bigger jump at the end when we get more break-oriented characters or more instance-based break-oriented characters added into the game. Like, we've already seen characters in the game that work with this right now, like Himeko, like Rappa we've seen in the game so far get added with this. Like, we've seen both these characters work off of instance-based breaking, so I feel like they can expand upon that and make them better. Now, the problem I see with him in the future is when we have dual DPS teams. Dual DPS teams might bite him in the ass later on, because he really solo buffs one guy, and you really can't swap off to another person to buff them up. Like, you're losing so much when you're not actually advancing the person that has his ultimate buff on them, right? So that's where I feel like that he might falter as in a dual DPS scenario. Whereas I feel like in the future, she'll be good with instance-based breaking when it gets added in. And she's also going to be good for dual DPS teams. This also comes with the con 2 breaking. Enemy types could fuck breaking up, guys. Like, if you get into an enemy that either A, like the new boss we have in the game right now, the Charmony boss, the Sunday boss, when they have multiple toughness bars you have to get down, you're not getting break every single time you get a toughness bar down. You have to break through all those bars to actually get the break damage, and that drastically drops the amount of damage that you're able to do with break type characters. So this is a big gripe I've had with break since it came out, and since it's been so hyped up since it came out. Don't get me wrong, I think break's great. I think break does nice damage, but you're gonna get fucked in your ass so hard whenever they release an enemy that you cannot break. Or enemies that take longer to break, right? That's where the breaking is going to be dog shit at, because if you can't break, you're not getting the initial break instance. You're also not getting any super break as well, so no super break there for you. So very down bad, cringe, horrendous. So, I mean, that's kind of the future proofing that you're dealing with. I see, like, instance breaking meta coming up, but I also see enemy typings that might fuck you. For him, like, dual DPS is going to fuck you, but overall, like, a much bigger upside because you're getting more of these 3.0 DPS that use summons and stuff like that. Also, something I should note with her as well. If you plan on going the Sunday route and using the new Remembrance MC, bud, yeah, good luck using a super break team. Because if you plan on using a summon team, you're going to have her. As of right now, she will be the only super break support in the game. So if you run into a situation where you're running these summons and you have a bunch of break characters on your account, bud, you are cucked, brother. It kind of puts you into a must-pull scenario for Fugue if you have a lot of break characters on your account, especially if you have Firefly and Rappa. You need a super break character on the team, right? So if you're planning to run Remembrance MC, and if they end up being actually really good, then you kind of just shot a whole team in the ass, because a lot of their, like, most of the damage relies on super break damage. So you're kind of kerfuckled into pulling for her, because she is like the only option that we currently have in the game outside of Harmony MC that offers super break damage. Now let's talk about pull priority. Now, pull priority is a really big thing here, guys, and I can break this down for you simply, right? Like, let's even taking a look at this list right here. If you plan on pulling for the future meta and you don't have any break characters in your account, this is a no-go. Just fuck her. You don't need her at all. You really don't even need her for an Acheron team per se. Like, she's a nice to have for an Acheron team for sure, and she can definitely work on Acheron teams, but don't pull her if you plan on pulling for the new future 3.0 meta with the summons and everything like that. It's just not a perfect fit, right? So I think in terms of pull priority value, I think he does have more in the grand scheme of things. But with that being said, if you don't plan on pulling for Aguila or whatever her name is, I think you could probably wait on him. Genuinely, like, we're getting Harmony, like, or Remembrance MC in the game that maybe I genuinely don't know what to do, but maybe they support the Remembrance class in some type of way. So maybe you could make an argument to say, well, I'm gonna pull for Fugue because I have a lot of break characters on my team or on my account, and I can maybe use Remembrance MC there, and then I have a team, like a free-to-play team for Remembrance, and then I have a more pay-to-win team for this. Where, I mean, I guess you could do it vice versa as well, where you pull Sunday and you have the pay-to-win team for summons and you have the less free-to-play team for her. Overall, though, guys, like I said, I think he holds more value. I think that he should be the one to pull for if you're planning to pull for both of these characters here. But at the end of the day, you could say fuck it and just build her, right? The 4-star one, I mean. Anyways, guys, that's really going to do it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts. Are you pulling for Fugue? Are you pulling for Sunday? Who are you pulling for? Or are you just skipping them both? I don't know, man. Let me know in the comments down below, guys. Would love to hear what you guys think. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Please subscribe to the channel, and yeah, that's going to do it. Sorry for this scuffed, jumbled ass video. It was planned to go one way, and it went south really quick. Anyways, guys, see you later. Bye-bye.